Hey there, my name is Katie Lindsey, and I am 30 years old. Um, there's really no way to say this other than if you don't know what ADD is, you're about to. I have 5 different degrees, and not one of them relate to each other at all. I started out with a general studies degree, and then I got a fine arts degree, a massage therapy degree, a bachelor's of psychology, a certified horseback riding instructor, and I have a welding degree and a 6-month welding certification. And I plan to add equine therapy to that list. Like I said, this is all over the place. There is a lot of that most people would think has nothing to do with each other. Um, some may say that it's crazy, but I try to look at it that I have a broad horizon in many different things. So I started out doing art when I first graduated high school, and I started doing art projects for people in town and different things like that. I ended up doing a fine arts degree at a college level. I made signs and t-shirts and storefront windows. I would paint for people, and I've continued practicing art throughout my entire life. About 2010, I had a friend that called me and said, "Would you like to do massage therapy school?" Never had that cross my mind my entire life or anything about it. But I said, "Sure, that'll be fun. Sounds good." So I did that for a while. I finished school and I worked out of my home. I worked out of hair salons. I worked at festivals, different things like that, participating, doing massage therapy. At the time, it wasn't really booming in Richlands. It was kind of not a necessity for many people. I was, I've still practiced that throughout the years and I will occasionally, but, and I enjoyed that because it helped many people. It helped people that struggled physically with many different reasons. Let's fast forward a little bit, and I have to refer to my notes because I've done so many different things. So about 2015, I was in Canada for a rodeo, and I saw a life-size Clydesdale statue made out of metal. And it was all old farm parts, tractor seats, rotors, different things, all from farm parts, all rusted and put together into this huge Clydesdale in the middle of Canada. I remember standing on that sidewalk thinking, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to build one of these statues. But it wasn't just a statue. At that moment, I realized I want to be a sculptor. I want to make things. I want to create things out of nothing. I want to take trash and turn it into something. I want to make useful things. So my whole life, I did art, paper art. I did painting, drawing, photography, everything like that. But I started thinking, I could make things that people could actually use. So it started out as I had a bunch of horseshoes laying around, and I thought I could make something out of these horseshoes for my horses. And so I come back from Canada. On the way home, I researched welding. And about a month later is when I was starting back school, finishing my general studies degree. I'd taken time throughout the years on and off for this degree here and there, and I would do different things. But it was in this moment, I was standing in there signing up for classes, and I needed one more class to become full-time. And I saw welding on there, and I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a welding class, and I'm going to learn to weld these horseshoes together. Not a big deal. Just, here, I'll take a class, and the rest I'll do it here and there. Well, let's fast forward 2.5 years where I ended up with a 2-year welding degree and a 6-month certification. This was mainly because I had a teacher that believed in me. He looked at me and he said, I realize this is just a hobby to you. He said, but you're very good at it. And I think that you can make a career out of this. And it never dawned on me that I was decent at it. I just thought of it as, I was just creating something and it was just fun. It never dawned on me that this could be work, this could be a career. And so I started school, I finished school, but halfway through school, I was, I was actually running a horse farm at the time while going to school. And there was about 15 horses, and I was doing some riding lessons here and there. And I had gotten an offer to do an internship at Eastman Chemical Company in Kingsport. So, of course, I took the offer, not really knowing what I was getting into. So I show up to work the first day, and there was 300 men working there and me. So again, I thought nothing of it. I thought this was nothing out of the ordinary. I grew up on playing sports. I was always one of the guys. I fit right in, and I really enjoyed that job, and there was so much opportunity there. I work with different types of metals that I would have never had the opportunity otherwise at different places. Work with, I remember they brought in a piece of metal to me that was probably about this big. And they said, this piece of metal is $10,000. So I was scared to death to weld on that metal. But I remember, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I would clean horse stalls out. I would go to work at Eastman from 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock. I would go clean the horse stalls out, then go straight to welding class in the evenings. And I would stay till 10 o'clock at night. And I remember my teacher saying, okay, it's time to shut down. And I would still be in there just burning rods, welding away. And it was because I loved it. And it was not class, it was not work to me. It was something I loved and I knew I was passionate about from the very beginning. So when I finished school, and kind of right before I even finished school, I started doing my own side business. I started making things for people. I started doing projects structurally. I started into my welding art. I still do all of this to this day, and I still have a side business doing this. But I remember this was all a very hectic time in my life, and I often wondered, like, is this worth it? Like, I'm so tired, I'm exhausted. But at the end of the day, I knew I loved what I was doing, and it was not really work to me. In between all of this, I took 3 weeks to take a riding certification to give horseback riding lessons in Illinois. I continued this throughout this whole time, and I still do this to this day. I've focused on children for the most part. I've worked with autistic children. I've worked with veterans. When a student is more advanced, I'll take them out on trail rides and different things. So I actually started, when my business started to pick up, I decided that, I was living in Johnson City at the time. And that really wasn't home to me. I was used to, back roads. I was used to everybody knew each other. I didn't really know anybody there. And I decided, I'm delivering projects every weekend back home. Why am I not at home? This wasn't home to me, but it gave me so much opportunity. And that is where I needed to be at that time. But that is not where I needed to be forever. And home kept calling me home. So I came home. And that is when I started working, making coal mining equipment for a company. I looked for several weeks for different jobs, and that became available. And I really enjoyed this. I'm fabricating. I'm learning how to build things, how to look at a blueprint. And looking back on my art degree, they realized there that I could draw. So I started making blueprints for them. And then they realized, I can weld, I can draw, I can install things. So they started sending me underground in the mines. So I worked underground for a little while here and there, and they would send me out to do projects and during shutdowns and different things. So I would go in and I would draw what needed to be built. Then I would go to the shop and I would make it. And then I would go back and install it. So I guess it was somewhere during this time, I must have realized I must not be busy enough. So I decided to start my psychology degree. Because before I ever started the welding degree, I always wanted to do equine therapy. So I kind of got off on the tangent when my teacher told me, hey, you're good at this. You should do welding. So I got sidetracked, but I believe it was all for a purpose and a reason. And I think everything has worked together and combined together for a reason. I still use my art degree. I still use my massage degree. I use my welding degree. I use my writing lessons, my certification for that. So I finished my psychology degree. So I was working making coal mining equipment during the day and then taking my psychology degree at night in the evenings. And I did this for, I guess, 2 years and finished it up. And I decided that when I saw this Indeed application, filled it out to be a counselor with at-risk children. I've always had a passion for children and elderly people. I'm very intrigued with autism and their genius ability and knowledge that they have. And I feel like it is a hidden thing. And I don't feel it is touched on enough, especially in the public school system. And that is one of my goals, is to eventually, do some equine therapy and work with autistic children, at-risk children, children that have home lives that are not the best, that have, their parents may not be involved, their parents may not be around. They may live with grandparents. They may struggle with learning problems, attention deficit, many different things like that. And I also would like to focus on, PTSD for veterans and, people that have been abused, different things like that. So I began working at the elementary school as a counselor with at-risk children. And I believe that this really helped me learn so much about children and what they go through at home. I never realized, because I was blessed with a very good childhood, I never realized that there was so much that went on that, could be so bad that some of these children go home to or don't go home to. So, some of them have no affection. Some of them have, a lot of negative things in their life. And, there may be drugs at home. There may be alcohol issues. They may have, nobody to tell them they love them. But it was during this time that I really realized just how rough the area is in some ways. This is a job I really couldn't leave it at work. I would worry about these children when I was at home. I was there with a shelter over my head. I had everything I needed, but I would worry about these kids. And it is not something that I could just leave, at 3:00, just shut the door on it and not worry about it. Uh, fast forward, COVID-19 caused the schools to shut down, and that closed that door in my life. So during this time, I began working as a full-time welder. I really didn't have any other choice, and I had recently found out during that time that I was type 1 diabetic. And so that changed everything quick. I had to have insurance. I had to do things differently. I had to learn how to live my life differently, but it sure hasn't stopped me by doing anything. But I learned to work for myself, to really work. I would get out. I did many different projects, and it was all sporadic. It was nothing, every day I was not doing something. I would be working on one project for a month, one project for several weeks. I worked during this time. I rebuilt a bridge. You know, welded a bar in town, repaired mills, many different other things. I did a lot of welding art during this time. So I would go out to junkyards and old farms, and I would find rotors, and I started making guitars out of car parts. I would take leaf springs and rotors and TIG welding wire and make guitars. I would make fire pits out of old rims from vehicles. Anything that I could do and I could create. If I had a vision, I created it. And I was able to make money, to make it through during this time. I remember getting old railroad parts and making people's names out of it. Just anything that I could find to help me throughout this time. But again, it wasn't like work. So then fast forward to the next, my next opportunity opened, and the next door was opening for my life. And this is where I currently am. I am a welding vocational teacher for Tazewell County Public Schools. I work in Tazewell at the vocational school, and I work with 9th to 12th grade kids. The majority is boys, young men. It is. I've got several young women too, which is really neat for me. This is my second year teaching, and I still do my side business. I still do my side welding. I still do my writing lessons. I still do everything like that. And I have a really good schedule, with this. I'm still able to go out in the evenings and do horseback riding lessons. I'm still able to do my own welding projects. But what I love most about teaching is this gives me the opportunity to do what I love. It gives me the opportunity to help others that really need it. Teenage years are a very tough time. Everybody listening probably can think back to their teenage years and think, there was a lot of changes going on. There was a lot for me to figure out during that time. And some people may not have as much guidance as others. And I think that, I remember being in high school, and I wanted to go to vocational school, and I thought that would be so neat. And, I wish I would have found it a lot sooner than I did. I wish I would have known welding when I was in high school. I didn't, I went through several different things before I figured out what I loved. I try to teach my students that this is not just, a place you have to be. This is a place where you can learn about your career and your possible interest. It may take several tries to figure out exactly what you want to do if it is at the vocational school. But vocational school gives these kids a chance to learn, how it is in real life scenarios, in my opinion. So what I try to do with my students is I try to bring in outside projects. All day they can weld on a piece of metal flat on the table. But I try to bring in broken down trailers, old rusted parts, welding on something rusted is so much different than a clean piece of metal. This gives students a chance to learn horizontal, vertical, overhead, all different types of welding positions. So I really think that there is not enough focus on vocational schools and hands-on things. There's been so many people out there that push for that college degree. And yes, I have many degrees. And I believe that my path, everything I've done, if I had to do it over, I would do exactly the same way. Some may say, why wouldn't you have focused on one thing? But I believe that everything that I have done relates. I still use my psychology degree every day on those young boys and women. I still use my art degree. I use my creativity. I use all of these things together now. I plan to eventually, hopefully, do my equine therapy degree and work doing that. I was working, I guess I worked probably 5 or 6 years in the industry before hey there. So I became, aware that working with metal is very intense, but it's also very meditating to me. It is tough, but it causes me to concentrate and put all of my energy and time into it. It takes me away from everything for a while. And I've tried to help these kids learn this, that, that they get so focused on it when they really have a passion for it. And there is so much need in our area right now. I have people calling me every day begging for welders, begging for my students before they even graduate. And that's an amazing thing, because we're in such a small area that, I never pictured things to be like this. People really, wanting these kids to come, but it's also sad that there's so many open positions, which means there's so many people not employed in the area. I want to touch a little bit on, being a woman in the industry, as you would say. I've had many people ask me about that. To me, I've never really thought of it being any different than, most people would think, there was many challenges, and at times there was, but I didn't think about it like that. I just had that tunnel vision, and I had my eyes set on what I wanted to do, and nothing seemed impossible. And I think that's what these kids need to realize is, no matter what it is possible. And no matter how much you don't realize how many opportunities there are out there, there is so much more than we realize, even in such a small town. I guess, I try to teach these kids, and I believe that, your attitude and perspective on life is the most important thing. So, I had many, many times in my life where I failed. Um, there is so many times where I would try something and it just didn't work. Things didn't work out. I had to start over. I had to start, fresh. And, there's so many times where I could have just gotten a negative attitude and outlook on things. And I guess the thing is to look at it as, no, this is not necessarily a negative thing. Maybe this is happening for a reasoning. Maybe this is closing one door so that one more can happen. And all of these closed and open doors that have happened, many, many different things throughout my life, I believe they have all happened for a reason. And it's put me where I need to be. There's been little rabbit trails here and stop signs and roadblocks and this and that. But I do believe that this has all led me to where I need to be. You know, I'm helping these young kids. I'm helping, giving back to this community. You know, I wasn't the best student always. I was in trouble when I was young. You know, I had attention problems. I couldn't sit still, so I can relate to these children. And I think that's what helps the most is, you know, I've been there. I get it, and I think they realize that too. And I guess, just to sum it up, that I would say, when everybody else went right, I went left. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think that don't ever let anybody tell you what you can do, because you should listen to yourself. If you want to do something, get out there and do it, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else. It's been a very exciting and crazy ride, and I'm very excited, you know, to keep giving back to these kids and teaching. I really enjoy it, and it's my passion. So does anybody have any questions or anything? And I apologize, I could not be there today in person.
Does anybody have any questions? Let me look on Facebook. I think we're good. All right. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.